Welcome to the True Demon Lord Show. I am the True Demon Lord Franco, and today we're going to be doing a tactics video for you. So we are going to be talking about and looking at different tips and tricks you can use with your Shadow of Chaos auras or bubbles. So, of course, all of your greater demons have a Shadow of Chaos bubble of a 6-inch aura that units of their own gods can benefit from. So, of course, a Bloodthirster's aura can only be affected or can only affect Blood Crushers, Bloodletters, etc., etc. Lord of Change can only affect Screamers, Pink Horrors, etc., etc. You get the gist. So, this is a 6-inch aura or like a bubble, which is something normally referred to as a shadow bubble, but the greater demons only affect their own gods or are god locked. Now, Belloc, on the other hand, also has this. He was the OG. He had this before everyone else got it, before it was cool. But his is not godlocked. His is undivided, meaning anyone can benefit from his, whether it be for doing Warp Surge or dropping within range of him, like only within 6 of him, 6 away from the opponent, etc., etc. So bear that in mind. That's one of the reasons why I think Belloc also has value, because he allows you to kind of have a fail-safe plan if you need to up and down certain units and you've got no other greater demons to really, allow that double drop or whatever. So we're just going to run you through a couple examples. As you can see here, we have a hectic game going on. So we have World Eaters and Demons. The reason I've gone with World Eaters here is just because they're a very combat-orient army, and it allows me to kind of just share the best examples. But we will probably talk about just a few different other things while we're showing you examples, such as armies that may have a bit more shooting. But we'll get into that once we start looking at the different examples. So we are going to run you through just a few different things. Some of these are known, some of these are simple. Like, I'm just showing you them for more so for the newer players, newer people to demons, or people that maybe don't comprehend those shadow bubbles and those extra rules as well. Basically just trying to make this all rounder, but there will be a few little, I don't want to say advanced or more advanced tactics, but I guess they kind of are, as far as using other stratagems in regards to the shadows. So let's start off with a pretty easy one, and that will be using your aura, your shadow bubble, to allow your other units to essentially use things like Warp Surge, which is a stratagem that we have that's 1 CP, which lets you advance and charge with a unit if they advanced, obviously, as long as they're in the shadows in the charge phase. So this could also be in regards to making sure units you have are in the shadows for battle shock tests. So essentially, it's anything where you need the area of effect to trigger something. So we are going to show you in this case with Warp Surge, but we'll talk through the other quick examples in addition to it. So as you can see here, we have our Keeper of Secrets right here. She's in the middle. She wants to go into this Rhino. She wants to essentially try and take the objective, maybe kill the Rhino. We'll see. Now, we also have a unit of Jackals on an objective over here. Ignore these 8-1. We just put them there because we want to fill the space. But we've got these Jackals over here on the right. They're on the objective. We basically want to try and zero, or not zero, but have an opponent for the pyramid in the middle. So we've got the Keeper. She's going to come up here. We've got this unit of Fiends, but with a 12-inch movement, which we are going to roughly do, we get to about here, which is not ideal, right? We're still quite far off of these Jackals. So we're going to throw an advance. And we roll a 4, for example, let's say. So boom. Now that's a lot easier of a charge. That's less than a 6-inch charge. Only problem is we need the Keeper of Secrets basically to give us shadows, right? Now, it's okay if you can, because sometimes you may not need a shadow bubble. If you're able to take half the objectives in no man's land during the movement phase or in the shooting phase, maybe shoot something off and now you can take it, then you don't need this. But in this case here, the Keeper didn't have enough movement from wherever she was to get on the Rhino, and we have one up here. We can't get enough Fiends on here to take it off the Jackals. So instead, let's just say, for this example, we need the Keeper. So we're going to take our Fiend, and we are going to be basically as little within 6 inches of her as possible, because we don't want to, lose out on too much movement. But basically, the idea is here, you probably don't even need to do this. You could probably do this instead. But basically, the idea here is we want to be within that 6-inch bubble while also being as close to these jackals as possible. So when it comes to the charge phase, there is an order to this, because if you charge the keeper in first, the fiends are no longer going to be within that shadow bubble. So you need to charge the fiends in first. So you spend your CP to warp surge because they are currently in the shadows because of the keeper. Let's say you make the charge. All things are nice and dandy. We're going to get on there. We'll get everyone in. We'll be able to beat up on those jackals. Perfect. And then after that, we're going to charge into the rhino with the keeper. Done. Simple, right? So you're using your shadow bubbles to prop certain areas of effects, or certain effects depending on stratagems and that. But if, for example, you needed to make sure that you knew a unit was going to essentially have to take a battle shock in the following phase, or you want to kind of protect against the battle shocks, then you might have a greater demon nearby a unit. For example, if you've got let's say a unit of plague bearers on an objective, and you know they're going to take a bit of a beating. Maybe you have a ground team on nearby, because you know that if you do have to take any battle shocks, you basically want not just the +1 to it, but then also returning D3 of the models back to their battle line. So yeah, I mean, that's the most simplest example, is just making sure you've got your auras about to allow your units to be able to use things like warp surge or better battle shocks, or even negative battle shocks, by now forcing your keeper in an area where there can be multiple enemy units. If you know you're going to be able to maybe not kill them, but beat them down quite a bit, now you've got that 6-inch aura of -1 battle shocks and D3 mortals if they fail. So another thing you might want to do again is like just throw a greater demon in amongst a bunch of enemy units that are going to force battle shocks, or another example, which we haven't got it set up here, but we can actually get it set up. Let's quickly get it set up. So we have a skull cannon. So say what we want to do. Say we've got the keeper here, and let's take 3 dudes. So say they are nice and screening out that rhino. Now, let's just say for the there we go. Let's just say, for the example, that whatever is here is essentially OC5. The keeper will only be able to contest it, or maybe OC6, or maybe there's, essentially you need to stop all of this. So you can then charge a keeper into here. She'll then deal with this, whether she'll kill them, which hopefully she does. Because she's got the 6-inch aura, it's now projecting onto the rhino. You could, or before you even charge in, let's say these are actually closer, because that goes against the whole example what we're trying to do. Say the keeper with her movement actually gets to here. Now all of this is within 6 inches. So what you can do is use your skull cannon, for example, to shoot at the rhino. As long as it hits, it will now have to take a battle shock test. And because of the keeper's 6-inch aura, or whatever greater demon it may be, or Bellicor, it will now be -1 to that battle shock, meaning now there's less chance that slightly less chance they'll pass it, and then it will become not just OC0, but also on top of that, not be able to use stratagems. Now, let's say you want to charge the rhino, like we were originally going to, but you've got this unit of 8-bound, and let's say the 8-bound are a bit more aggressively positioned. Let's say your opponent, knowing your demons, isn't too scared of your shooting. So they've set up these. Oh, there we go. Landed on his feet. Let's say they've basically set up to get ready to heroic. So what you want to do is stop that, because not just will these 8-bound hurt. Now the keeper could probably take it. It's still not ideal, but on top of that, they're going to then get more OC on the objective. Now let's say we've got our skull cannon. Let's say it does have enough movement to be able to get the line of sight, but if it doesn't, maybe it could drop down. If it can't get 9 inches away, you could use denizens of the warp. For 3-inch deep strike, be able to drop somewhere maybe like that, so you could maybe tip the objective while getting some shots off, whatever it may be. But denizens of the warp. So now we're going to use her aura. Maybe she's where she originally was, but they're going to be within 6 inches. They're an inch off the wall, so we can't charge them through the wall, but we don't want to. Now you're going to use your skull cannon to hit them. maybe do some damage, but that's not really what you're trying to do here. They now have to take a battle shock in -1 because of the keeper. And if they fail, they're now not going to be able to use any stratagems such as heroically intervene, which is the big one here. So again, just probably some of the best ways to position yourself to make sure you are getting those shadow bubbles off. And trying to make the most of it, trying to maximize it. Now, here is probably the most common way to use your shadow bubbles. We've got it set up here. The reason I've set it up is just because I can't be asked to try to do all the measuring again, but I'll explain exactly what we've done. So, as you can see, your opponent has screened out fairly nicely, but maybe their naivety or maybe overthinking has left no 9-inch screened, not thought about the 3-inch deep strike. So, at the end of our turn, we've picked up Be'lakor, and we could pick up Shalaxi, or she could have already been in the air. It doesn't matter. But Be'lakor more than likely is on the board. I don't think you ever deep strike Be'lakor innately. I never have. I've never seen anyone do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring Be'lakor down using the Denizens of the Warp stratagem, like we just talked about with the Skull Cannon, so which will give us a 3-inch deep strike. So that means Be'lakor can now sit here. And again, this doesn't just have to be with Be'lakor. You could do this with anything that has a shadow bubble. Just again, be aware that it is, if it's a greater demon, it is godlocked. So to bring Shalaxia here, you'd have to drop a keeper. If you want to drop a Bloodthirster, you'd have to drop have a Bloodthirster or Scarbrand or vice versa, etc., etc. You get it. But with Be'lakor here, we can drop anything. Now, in this example, we don't have loads of space. But if we had a bit more space, we could then maybe pick up Be'lakor if we had a Bloodthirster in the air or Scarbrand, and we could pick them up. We could drop Shalaxi down. So we could actually drop Be'lakor down and then big monsters either side of him and then get multiple charges. But in this instance, we've only got the one space gap. But basically, yes, you can do this with anything. This is just the example. So we've dropped Be'lakor using Denizens of the Warp. Now, you don't have to use the Denizens of the Warp. If your opponent has left enough space for Be'lakor to 9-inch deep strike, fantastic. But a lot of the times, Denizens of the Warp is going to be used. It allows you to get into these great spaces. It is, aside from being able to just take an objective with a unit of Pink Horrors or Plague Bearers or something like that, or a Greater Demon, it is the best use of Denizens. So you drop him down, you then drop Shalaxi or your monster or unit of choice. It could be Scarbrand, a Bloodthirster. No questions if you could fit them in. It could be anything. They drop down Holy Wind 6 of Be'lakor, 6 away from all enemy units, and now Shalaxi gets a reroll 6 in his charge onto Scarbrand. And most of the time, she makes a real mess of old angry Ron, especially with her shooting and all that kind of stuff as well. But like we said, this could be an example using any of them. This is just a rough example. Another good one you could do is the Bloodthirster or Scarbrand, dropping down, spitting out not just a Bloodthirster, but then Blood Crushers, Bloodletters, Ground Cleavers, spitting out other Ground Cleavers or Rotagus and Plague Bearers, etc., etc. Now, just remember that the Shadow Bubbles can link or chain. So if you wanted to, say, drop Be'lakor and then drop, I don't know, a Bloodthirster, and then you could then drop Scarbrand within 6 inches of the Bloodthirster, not within Be'lakor, because again, once they land, their bubble takes effect on the board. Of course, you can't land in your own shadow bubbles, because this is a question that comes up all too often. People asking, can you drop a Be'lakor or a Greater Demon 6 inches down because they've got their own shadow bubble? And the answer to that is no. They only have a shadow bubble when they are on the board. When they are coming down, there is no aura on the board for them to drop into unless you've already got shadows either through another monster or through natural shadows. But yes, so you get the idea. Dropping down, spitting something 6 inches away, or spitting out multiple units 6 inches away, or in some cases being able to drop down, spit something 6 inches out, and then start gaining and then spitting 6 inches out, getting more spread from your shadow drops. So now the last one we're going to look at is something that is a little bit more advanced, and that's using rapid ingress in relation to the Shadow of Chaos, or using Shadow of Chaos in relation to rapid ingress. So there is a couple ways to do this. So I feel like I should start with how the Shadows works with rapid ingress. So if at the start of your opponent's movement phase, you control half or more of the objectives in no man's land, which generally is quite common, shadows will be procced for the rest of the phase. Now, rapid ingress happens at the end of the phase, which would then, because your opponent gets to decide the order, would happen after objective control is decided, because that happens at the end of the phase as well. So, for you to have natural shadows in the middle, you must still control half or more of the objectives in no man's land. So, if your opponent is sitting back and going to try and shoot off the objectives, fine. But if not, and your opponent just comes and takes it, you're no longer going to have natural shadows in the middle, therefore you can't rapid ingress naturally in the middle. But what you can do is you can drop within shadow bubbles. So, for example, we've got this unit of 10 Berserkers. They want to come and beat up on our poor old Lord of Change. Though, if you've been playing Space Marine 2, you may not think so poor Lord of Change after what he was doing in that game. But that's just because I've recently literally just finished playing it and seeing the Lord of Change, and that was awesome. But we're not talking about Space Marine 2. We're talking about rapid ingressing with shadows. So we've got our nice mighty Lord of Change, but we've got 10 Berserkers who want to come and beat up on our old man chicken. So, for you to be able to, what we're going to do is we're going to take this unit up in horrors. What we want to do is we want to rapid ingress the unit down to protect the Lord of Change. Now, this is not going to work against an army that can shoot them off. So, and this is what we were saying at the beginning of the video. If against the World Eaters, they've not got enough shooting to clear a unit of 10 pink horrors. So therefore, that a few pistols that the Berserkers have is going to not do enough. Even if they do kill a few, you'll still be able to keep your screen going, or you'll be able to split and again push out even further. But against an army that might have the firepower to do so, then you might have to double think. Now, we can show you a different technique you can do using the ingress in a minute. But the idea is this unit here is about 7.5 inches away. Now, this, again, I do have to reiterate this. Obviously, when you drop a unit down within range of a shadow bubble, for example, the pink horrors within range of the Lord of Change, they must land solely within 6 inches of the Lord of Change, 6 inches away from, or over 6 inches away from enemy units. The base size of a pink horror is 32 mils, which is a little bit over an inch. I want to say about 1.2-ish, maybe a little bit more. So basically, you must be 6 inches away from opponents. You're going to be about an inch, 0.2 to 0.5 away. So essentially, for your opponent, to be able to do this, you need to make sure that your opponent's enemy unit or charging unit is 7.2 or 3 inches away, basically. So the charge range must be over 7 inches, to put it lightly, or to put it simply. So in this case, it is. They are 7.5 inches away. So we are going to take our pink horrors and we're just going to roughly do this. But what we are doing, as you can see, is we are creating a line. Now, of course, these Berserkers are probably going to pick up the pink horrors unless you've got something like Fiends or Nurglings hanging around to make them -1. Even then, they'll probably still make good work of it. If you've got a Flux Master in the unit from -1 to hit anyway, then that's also quite helpful. As you can see, what we're doing is we are creating a barrier around the Lord of Change, keeping our coherency, and essentially making it that when your opponent now wants to make the charge, as long as they can't clear this unit, which again, they're not going to be able to because they're World Eaters, and before they make the charge, they have to make the charge into the pink horrors, and because they haven't got any way to clear the unit first, they have to hit the pink horrors, meaning your Lord of Change is safe from being hit. But of course, if the unit of horrors are cleared, they will be able to pile into the Lord of Change. The Lord of Change will get to donk them back with his stick, and he doesn't have to fall back. He can just sit there and shoot, but your opponent will probably still take the objective. But the idea is your unit is safe. Now, if your opponent does this by dropping a unit in, for example, they come in from deep strike, they're going to be 9 inches away. So I mean, they are now going to be, even if they have any pluses to charge, you can then definitely do the shadow drop. So another tip there to use on it. This doesn't have to be pink horrors. Obviously, in this case, it was the best one to do. But with the keeper, you could drop in some fiends. With a blood thirst, you could drop in blood crushers or blood. You can do it with anything. But always be aware. When your opponent, always think in your mind, can your opponent remove this unit before the charge roll was made? Because if your opponent has something here to shoot, say they had a brigand or a couple of brigands, for example, in the World Eater's case, they could do a lot of work on this pink warrior unit, meaning the berserkers are going to get the charge in anyway. And that's not ideal. You don't want that. So make sure you're not wasting that CP you've just spent. Now, let's say we don't have a unit of pink horrors, or we don't have a unit that we could do that with. And let's say, in this example, it will be the fact that, let's say we did have a natural shadow in the middle. Say we held the we still hold the objectives in the middle at the end of your opponent's turn. The idea is they're going to try and just shoot you off or charge onto the objective to take the objectives off you, or to take the objectives off you, but they haven't got enough movement or OC to take it off you during their movement phase. That now means that for the rest of the phase, including the end going into the shooting phase, you are going to have natural shadows in the middle. So now, in this case, we've got the Lord of Change. If we had, so what we're going to do, I'll talk you through it and then we'll show you talk about the difference. We're instead going to do what I like to call an aggressive rapid ingress. So this is going to be like a 2 CP strategy, right? So the idea is, now again, we're just using a Bloodthirst for reference. It could be absolutely anything. I've done this with Blood Crushers, but then use Shadow Bubbles to do it. And the idea is you're dropping in something with a combat threat. Now, you don't want to put it in a space where it's going to be easily charged, unless it is something like a Bloodthirster. If you could get 6-inch on the objective, then now you're doubling up on the OC on the objective, forcing your opponent to have to make multiple charges. And with a Bloodthirster, they're going to, that Bloodthirster are going to make mincemeat of these berserkers. The chances of them killing the Blood Crusher or the Bloodthirster while also double charging, not 100% likely. So yes, so you get the idea. Is we are going to use the rapid ingress to bring down something to protect this unit. So through a rapid ingress and then for a heroic intervene. So just be aware that is going to cost you 1 CP for rapid ingress, then 1 CP for heroic intervention. But to keep not just an objective, but also a key unit like the Lord of Change alive is 100% worth it. An example I've used in the past is I had the Bloodthirster in this position instead of the Lord of Change. So my opponent was playing Black Templars, he was charging in. So I rapid ingressed down a unit of Blood Crushers, and then the Blood Crushers heroically intervened. I had them sitting behind the behind the Blood Crusher. So while the Crusader, not the Crusader unit, the Sword Brethren unit was a 6-inch charge from the Bloodthirster. It was actually an 8 or a 9-inch charge to the Blood Crusher, so my opponent didn't want to risk failing it. So they just charged the Bloodthirster. I was then able to charge onto the object, or charge into the unit with my heroic intervention with the Blood Crushers. And when you heroically intervene, the only thing you don't get is the charge bonus, which the charge bonus is fight first. You do get everything else you would normally get for charging. For example, in the Blood Crusher case, you would still get to do your impact it. So I still got to roll my 6 dice, every 4 plus for causing D3 mortal wounds. And it is a deterrent, because now your opponent's set up to charge, but now they know they have another unit going to hit them. It might make them not even bother doing it in some cases, or in some cases they're committed, so they're going to do it, and it's not going to work out in their favor. In this case, we are just using the Bloodthirster to either deter the World Eater charge, the Berserker charge, or to combat it, to counter it, to try and keep the Lord of Change, if not safe, instead being able to kill the unit if they do kill the Lord of Change and keep the objective. So that is just a couple examples on how to utilize rapid ingress with your Shadow of Chaos or Shadow of Chaos bubbles. Then we did talk about just normal shadows as well. Now just be aware, obviously, that's only if we have natural shadows being able to come 6 away. But if we didn't, say the keeper wasn't on the objective, and we didn't have the or we didn't have half more of the objectives at the start of our opponent's movement phase, or they were able to take them off us before rapid ingress, you can still get 9 away. And then that's forcing your opponent to either have to charge in an awkward way, or because of the way they've set themselves up, they're going to have to make the charge either way. And now they're going to be within 6 inches, allowing you to just do that. So And I do recommend, when you are doing this type of trick, when your opponent does come to making their charges, watch those charges carefully, because when a model makes a charge move, if it can end in base contact, it must do so. And just remember as well, um, if you're able to then get into contact with some units that, for example, let's actually show this one. So say they make the charge into the Lord of Change, they've rolled a pretty hefty charge, so they're not really going to get to keep out of range of the Bloodthirster. What you can now do is use the Bloodthirster to take some heat off the Lord of Change. And what I mean by that is, by heroically intervening the Bloodthirster, you're going to make it into contact with at least one model, meaning that model can no longer make a piling move, and then all models must make their piling moves towards the closest enemy model, which in this case will be the Bloodthirster. So, of course, the ones that can go that way, but you're now going to have less attacks coming in on the Lord of Change or unit you're trying to protect, using the Bloodthirster to take the heat off him, and then on the swing back, because hopefully it doesn't die. If they have a Master of Executions in this case, it might do. Always remember, again, like we said with the pink arrows and the shooting, if it is a unit that is going to kill the Bloodthirster or kill the Blood Crushers, the Blood Crushers may be a little bit different because you can do the impact hit, so you're getting to do something first. But basically, if the unit you're rapid ingressing isn't going to actually get to do anything, like that you spend your CP to rapid, you spend your CP to heroically intervene, then it dies, there is no point in doing it. So always keep that in your mind. Is it worth doing? Is the unit I'm putting down going to be killed? Is it going to be shot? Like, just like we said with the pink horrors, if I put the Bloodthirster down here behind, as my opponent's got units that they can shoot at the Bloodthirster and kill it, are they going to be able to shoot it enough where it's now not worth it to heroically intervene? You've always got to weigh up the options, but I'm giving you the tools here to try and defend against these situations. And then, because again, every game is different, the scenarios will always be different. Oh, knocking the mic. The scenarios will always be different. So just keep that in mind. So, yeah, there are just some examples of rapid ingressing or with shadows, or using your shadow auras for either warp surge or battle shock buffs and debuffs, or the classic, Russian nesting bowl demons, where you drop down 6, chuck something out 6, then potentially chuck more stuff out 6, and then make 6-inch charges, etc., etc. These are just, to be honest, it is one of our biggest benefits, our biggest advantages as demons, as a faction, is our ability to manipulate and use deep striking as well as we do, going up and down. 6-inch deep strike, we're the only army in the game that can 6-inch deep strike, or deep strike less than 9 and still charge, to my knowledge. Obviously, there are a bunch of armies that have 3-inch deep strike, whether through a stratagem or through units being able to do it, like Inceptors or the new Kill Team Guard unit or whatever. But we can 3-inch deep strike, we can up and down, we can 6-inch deep strike, but we can still charge after the 6-inch deep strike. As an army that is very combat heavy, being able to do that is pretty big. But like we showed you with the Skull Cannon, you don't always have to use all these ability or all this deep striking just to charge. Being able to get units in position to shoot, like the Lord of Change, or like the Skull Cannon, or even 3-inch deep striking on an objective with something like Rotigus to just take it off your opponent. But hopefully you were able to get some stuff from this and maybe be able to implement them in your games. Just remember, like I said, scenarios depending what you're against. Some of these tricks may require, some adaptation during your game, depending on what you're against, the situation going on. Just because I showed you with the units I showed you doesn't make this hard and fast. You change it up depending on your list, the situation going on, etc., etc. So, leave a like and subscribe. As always, it helps massively and I really do appreciate it. Check out Facebook, Instagram to keep up to date with all things True Demon Lords, and we will catch you all in the next one.